Welcome back to another episode of Pushing Back Cars with me, Paul Melon McFadden. I hope you guys are all well out there, and thanks for joining us. We're here with my usual mate, Mike. How are you going?
Melon, it's great to see you again. Um, Still glad that you can't see me on here because I just woke up. It's Sunday morning, enjoying a tall coffee. But yeah, man, everything's good over here. Having a great time. Lots of work going on, but also, man, I'm taking the time to really enjoy the opportunities of having fun and exploring and adventuring and even a little bit of coaching, uh, if you can believe that. So,
Love it.
and not with work, but yeah, just a small group out here. So it's been great, man. I'm having a great week. It's been a nice chill weekend. The weather is starting to cool off a little bit where I'm at, and Father Fall has, I think, started to show his face a little bit, and summer is slowly coming to an end.
It's so good to hear that you're well and you're enjoying what you're doing, and you're getting some downtime as well, being able to find the little bit silver linings here and there to connect and have experiences that are great and special. And yeah, I love hearing about it. Hearing the weather change there. The weather has literally just started changing probably in the last week or two here in Melbourne, where we're coming to the end of our winter, and it just feels like the back has been broken, I reckon, in the last couple of weeks, and just had like a warm day today. I saw heaps of people out in sort of t-shirt and shorts. Just started, just started. It's nice. It's a good
It is
welcome
pretty,
change.
yeah, it is pretty wild. Not too long ago, I was out swimming at a pool, and I'm out there and it's like 90, 95 degrees. It's pretty warm. I'm all in my bathing suit, and Melon sends me a picture of him and his family at I think it was at a football game,
Yeah,
and you
yeah. The
guys are all bundled
Australian
up in
rugby.
Australian rugby, yeah, and you guys all had like scarves and big jackets on. And I was like,
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
we're literally in two different worlds right now.
Almost as if the Earth is a globe
Oh
and
no,
it's
it's
not
definitely
flat after
flat.
all.
No, it's definitely flat. Yeah, I fell off a few times in the
Yeah,
past couple months, but
yeah,
I
yeah.
found my way back.
All the people in Australia are actors, apparently. On one of the rants I saw online. Good times.
Oh man.
Yeah. So,
So, what
yeah, one of
topic
my
you got
buddies.
this week, Melon?
Well, we, one of my buddies at work, his son has just joined the Australian Air Force and is started at the officer training school, which is on the base where I work, and had me thinking a lot about a question you asked me last week about my experience of standing up in my first couple of days down there and talking in front of a group and being assessed fairly critically by the staff, which is what they're there to do, right? And I was thinking about the culture and the vision of the workplace where I am now, which has had a really major overhaul and change and transformation. And just building on that theme of leadership, where we were talking last week, I thought that we could continue in the vein of leadership and uh, one of the most critical roles, I think, for the real leaders in any organization, families, sporting teams, work businesses, and military units, is that ability to develop and uh, sustain a vision, like what that team or family or unit or business group is there to do, and how to get people aligned on that. And there's going to be elements of separately of building and sustaining and possibly even transforming a culture through this process. So yeah, that's sort of the thing that's been on my mind during the week, just casting back to what you asked me last week and just observing, how the culture has changed from the 90s military that I joined into where it is now, and whether there's still this important role for leaders in developing and sustaining a vision. So I'm not sure how you feel about that topic, Mike.
I love it. It's very relevant at honestly, any point in time, I think. I know we've talked a lot about struggles with identity, struggles with purpose, things like that. It's very easy for a leader, I'm holding up my quote fingers, a leader to just say, hey, do better. Hey, be a man. Hey, why don't you run that? Just these blatant general statements that just sound like, they think they sound good. But
Mm.
what's missing is the step-by-step processes, the context of it. Um, I bring it back to having a vision of things.
Mm.
Anything that we choose to do, whether it's a sport, an activity, a job, starting a family, there's usually a point where you're just kind of sitting there and you can envision yourself doing it or being part of it, being successful, playing with your kids, uh, going on vacations as a family. I mean, whatever. There's a vision related to that. And
Mm.
oftentimes it can seem like a dream. Oh, and statements like, maybe one day, oh, that would be nice. Uh, inshallah, God willing, like all these things. But if you really want something like that, where do you start? uh,
Mm.
what is the purpose of having that vision? That vision is there for a reason. It's usually related to something that you dream of, that is happy. It's not really, I don't really have visions of doing terrible things. It's usually more happy
Mm.
things about, like, you know going to work and having a successful day with my mates, or accomplishing a goal, or deploying and having good effects,
Mm.
coming back feeling like I contributed to something, or we achieved something, or a goal that nobody thought could be possible.
Yeah.
Or raising my son to be a good man and watch him succeed and be a good person to his wife or to his children one day. Like, I have the visions like that all the time. But where do I start? How do I get there? How do I break down the point of, the end state, which is where I see the vision happening, to my current spot? There's a lot of space in between there. There's got to be planning. There's got to be small and medium and large
Mm.
victories. There's got to be commitments. There has to be uh, sacrifices, possibly. I have to give up other things in order to come over here to accomplish that vision. And yeah,
Yeah,
there's a
love it.
lot that goes into it, but I definitely think it's important, man. Having a vision as a person is very important, but also I think what we can get into is the role of leadership to support that vision and what it looks like.
So in this context, maybe it's time to just sort of let people know what we're talking about when we say the word vision. This can mean different things to different people in different contexts. And I think what Mike and I are talking about here is um, the North Star, the overall goal, the thing that's going to shape strategies and decisions and actions. That there's an alignment that comes behind a goal or a vision that's effective and it motivates people. There's it's like a future vision of an end state that you're all working towards. It could be like a premiership trophy for a sporting team, or it could be, as you say, having a young children grow into successful and well balanced young adults moving into the workforce. And I think some element of it as well, Mike, is not just what it is we're trying to achieve, but the way we want to achieve it. That there's going to be principles and values that are going to be embedded in that vision. So it's not like we go rob a bank to get the money to achieve the goal. There's principles and values that are going to drive the way that goal is achieved, that are just as important as the place you're going
Yes.
ultimately. So, are there any other elements that you'd add to a definition of vision in this context?
I'd also argue that there is a huge, mm, I would label it, emotional end state of
Mm.
feeling, hmm, It's kind of hard to put into there. See, this is what I'm talking about, though. When we
Mm,
get into deep things like this and these small things, like how do we label this? How do we navigate the beginning to the end? You know, that there's certain things that we desire about this vision or the outcome, but there's little steps in every aspects of life that get us to there.
mm.
You know, and
So there's
I
going to be
would,
like a level of purpose, maybe, that comes
yes,
out of the overall goal, the overall vision. That's when that purpose is there, you're able to then filter the things that come in the day to day and week to week, and you're able to navigate all of these, the way life throws itself at you. And as you're saying there,
yeah,
the small actions, it can sort of be, um, you can get a bit lost when you don't have a vision that's giving you that alignment, so that the short term and the small are aligned with the big and the long term.
yes. So I guess I'll explain it this way is usually when I have a really good vision of something, it brings me to a state of joy.
Mm,
And I don't want that to be confused with happiness because they are in fact different. So when I'm thinking about what am I doing, as you're saying, on a character slash value level to get me to that point, like I'm not going out to rob a bank to get the money, but I'm
mm,
doing it in respectable ways. Um, am I? Is this vision about being happy, or is it about bringing me and living in a state of joy?
yeah,
Because happiness is fleeting. It's usually temporary. It's a spike on the if you were to chart it, it's just a spike in your life of like, oh man, this is so great, and I'm happy, and you're smiling and whatever. But a state of joy is like also a state of gratitude and peace, that it's not necessarily happiness where you're just jumping out of your seat and jumping and excited and screaming and all this stuff. It's more of just like, I look at it more as sitting, this pops in my head as here's vision, sitting back on a park bench as an old man and just watching everything that I have in my life just kind of work together, and
mm,
realizing from the little things to the big things are right in front of me. And it's like, wow, man, like this is where I'm at in my life. And I just have an immense sense of gratitude and joy to have and experience all of this. It's not like I got an award and I'm jumping for joy for 5 minutes and then I'm back down that night going, well, now what am I going to do? Well, that's over. What's next? Oh, I don't have this though. I don't have this. And that, you get lost in that. So I think going back to your question is just, it's very important to identify what that vision means to you. Is that temporary
yes.
happiness, or are you really going for the end state of just purpose and joy at the end, and just sitting there and recognizing that, dude, no matter what happens, big or small, this is all going to be good, you know?
Mm. It's I really like you adding that piece there about, like, that's the meaning, the meaningfulness of the vision or the goal, because that can help align. Like, and a little example is, a number of the times at the Riyadh Rugby Club when we'd go to the Dubai Sevens, we were sort of, we don't, no change rooms, no clubhouse, no anything there. We just have a pitch, and we'll sort of turn up, and no formal structure or anything. It was literally just a group of people who loved playing rugby together and having a run, and the social elements as well. But when we'd go and compete, and there'd be 35 teams from the region, we were consistently in the top four, sort of year in, year out. And it was each time we'd get together and start the season and the build up, who was in and who was not, and who was available and who was new and who'd left. And it'd be um, re-establishing what was it that we were trying to achieve that year. And towards the end of my time there was a bit of a change, and some new people had come, and some people had also gotten a bit older. And it was like, actually, the group didn't really want to go there and absolutely bust a gut trying to win every game. They wanted to go there and enjoy the social experience of being together. And so the vision for that tournament that year was different than the other years. And it wasn't like less or better. It was it was different. It was a group of guys who were like, a few people were like, this is going to be our last run. And, I really just want to go there and celebrate this connection and this team that we've had for these years, and, enjoy a few cold drinks and a bit more social rather than really the super hard competitive stuff. And so the meaning that's attached to that vision can change, and it doesn't have to be the same all the time. And it can vary with different seasons and where that's going to fit into like your vision for your life, overall sort of stuff. It could be there's a season for different stuff. Like we talked about the seasons of leadership last week, but it's got to be meaningful to the individual. And I think maybe that leads into the start of the discussion there, Mike, about like how does a leader build the vision? Like how have you seen this done well? Have you seen it maybe done not so well? And what sort of elements in the leadership element of building the vision in the team have you seen, or would you like to sort of move on to?
Yeah, that's the question. Hey, here's a vision, here's an idea, here's an end state. How do I get there? Where do I start? What do I focus on? Do I read? Do I go back to school? What do my daily actions look like? Who do I need to become as a person in order to be that? There's so many questions that I think a lot of times it can become overwhelming to a single person, especially when you're trying to do it on your own. And I'm not saying it's impossible, because it's not impossible, but it's probably a lot harder. When you identify a leader, again, to me, leadership is, in this sense, it's the leader's responsibility to translate that vision into practical reality. If I tell some 10-year-old kid that he's like, yeah, one day I'm going to go climb Mount Everest, which is just insane, right? That's an insane, out of this world goal, right? Or an 11-year-old who tells everybody that, hey, when I grow up, I want to be in special operations in one of the hardest units on the face of the earth. Like, you're too small, you're too skinny. Yeah, you don't have enough money, you're not successful. Yeah, you can't do it. Like, how do I, as a leader, how do I let this person know it is possible, and this is where you start? And then once you start, then I need you to focus on these 5 things. And then once you get those, now I have another 5 things. And remember how emotional you got at this day when this happened? That's part of it, because it's going to translate from A to B, and then it's going to carry you and prepare you for when this happens. And it's this constant discussion, it's this constant interaction as a leader to this person or to where you're trying to go, with applying that vision into everything that you do. Like, why do you wake up in the morning? What's your purpose for even getting out of bed?
Yes.
But like starting there.
And when you've got a group, Mike, it can be easier in some areas, I think, to have a vision when there's already a really strong mission or vision that people have, like in our military units, why they've joined those units. When you've seen, like, I'm trying to think about when that's not as clear, how do we get a group of people to align on something, when it might not be something they're already thinking or feeling. Like I've seen that example with the rugby team was just like a pre-season at a barbecue, and it was really like discussion. We did this a few years in a row. It was like, really, what are we doing this year? And you could then, everyone could sort of voice their opinion in an open forum and make sure that everyone was able to talk, not just the loud guys. And you could then, you could get a sense of what the feeling was in the group. And it was really clear that in these, in the years we went and competed really hard, like that was what we were doing. We're really going there to win. One year we were runner-up, made it into the grand final. It just was unheard of before. Like Riyadh had never really done anything like this at that scale. But it was like clear when we had the discussion that there was really a lot of passion, and there was a lot of capable people in the room who really wanted to put their hand up and go hard. And then the other time was more like going through injuries, a bit older, and look, I really just want to enjoy this. I want to have this last run with my mates. And it was a different vision. And how I saw it in those environments where there wasn't like we're all coming in, we've got a really clear task that's been given to us that we're already aligned on. It was like a consensus building exercise that was needed at the start to really establish what is a vision for the group. And then that guided how we trained and everything else after that. So have you seen any sort of systems or processes where there's been a development of the vision by a leader with the group? Because I'm thinking here about buy-in and people's commitment, and you're saying about the we talked earlier about possibly people committing for a season of something, and then like one night after the first training run, there's like hardly anyone there. And how do you get people to commit and have that sustain over time? So I was thinking around a certain level of consensus that needs to be built in a group. And I've seen that done effectively, like in an open forum discussion that's had key people speaking, but making sure that everyone gets to have a say. Have you seen anything like that or something different maybe?
Yes, many times, both in personal life and professional life. And it comes down to, usually the question goes like this of like, why are you here? Like, why'd you even start this? Why'd you even attempt this? And I've heard that in, relationships. I've heard that in military service of like, hey, you want to come into this unit? Why are you even here? Well, I want to be part of the best. Yeah. Okay. I haven't heard that in about 6 seconds. Why are you really here? And you dig down onto the personal level and actually get to know that person. And dude, like sometimes when you dig into a person's past or their experiences and understanding why they want that goal, and again, this is coming from a leader's perspective, is it's your responsibility to know your people. It's a responsibility to really know your family and know where they're coming from, why they think the way they do. Why do you even want a crazy goal, vision like that? Like, that's very rare. Like, what makes you think you can even achieve that? Like, what happened to you? There's usually drivers and characteristics, man, that you can dig out of people and share with one another. It's not just one way, but share and really understand why they want something so bad. And that could be a starting point there, in that setting, in that conversation. I mean, you and I, Melon, and you've talked about it and you're living it. You live it all the time. I just saw it right before we recorded. But, both of us losing our dads at a young age, it was terrible. But as we got older and had the opportunity, you became a father, and now you have a son and a daughter, and you know the importance of how important it is to show up as a father, as a husband, as a friend, and be there. And your vision of having this family that is, successful in the means of, self-sustaining. They can take care of themselves. They can move about the world with confidence, and they're not scared to do things, and they're healthy. Like, you talk about this great vision all the time, but it's the little things in between. And your vision as a leader, because of something that happened to you probably when you were 11 with your dad passing, it taught you so much, which brought you to the thing of like, man, I want to be a great father. I want to be a great husband, and I want to have a wonderful, healthy family with security, with compassion, that can depend on one another. We have each other. There's no boundary there. Right. And that carries over beautifully, even though it was from a terrible thing. But when you can, as a leader, you can identify those things in your people and then understand them, you can start to work and be like, well, hey, I have opportunities to get you there now, and then communicate them.
Well said, mate. Thank you for that. It's funny, like the thing I was thinking while you were talking there is it's like the individual values maybe a building block to the vision, and that you can't have a vision that's not aligned with your individual values. So maybe it's the values first, Like you were just saying there, you understand. Well, my dad passed, as you said, when I was 11, but he really influences me all the time. I think about him, like, I think nearly every day, and certainly in my parenting all the time. Like I've got I don't know, a soft copy or a spiritual version of him in my mind. And I often think about like, what would he do in these situations? And so he's been gone for a very long time now, 37 years, but I can still get guidance from him. And maybe those values came from him are then inside these individual values I've got that then generate a vision, as you say, for my family, like being independent and strong and super cohesive and tight. They're really values, I think, that are inside this vision of having a family that's got love and meaning in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I feel like maybe a very large part of that developing the vision is getting clear on the values of the individuals. As you're saying, why are we here? What are we trying to achieve? And that when you're able to have, like when there's trust present, which is another value or another trait of leaders, to be able to create that environment of trust. People are able to communicate their values and are open to be impacted by other people's values. And you can sort of, be like, oh, how's that impact me? How do I feel about those values? And then that can be the thing that is then used to build that vision. Because I feel like there's a big communication element in this establishing the vision stage, and that getting input from people allows you to see where you've got the overlap, where you've got the commonality. I'm aligned with those parts of what Mike's saying, and I'm not so sure about what this other guy's saying. Maybe ask some questions, and then you can see whether that's got consensus or not. And then out of that, I think you're then able to start to establish what some clear, achievable goals are. Like you were saying, getting it into the practical reality, like you just said earlier, that you've got the overall vision, you've got some values, and then there's like starting to develop pathways. So having those measurable, specific steps, those SMART goals we always talk about, keeping people focused and motivated on what we're doing.
Yes, 100%. And notice at no point was it, was it saying this is about me having power in a leadership position, like power in a negative sense. Yes, you have power because you have a position or responsibility and you're a leader, hence leadership. But it is not about power. It's about the vision and your responsibilities to those in that vision. And you should be asking yourself, what can I contribute to this vision to help everybody get to where they want to be? What are my talents? What am I good at? What things aren't I good at? Where can I ask for help? Where can I depend on others to work on that piece? Because let's be honest, I suck at that. And it's communicating. It's knowing your strengths and weaknesses of the people involved in that vision or in the end state, being vulnerable, right? Leadership is vulnerability, being open and transparent to your people. And sometimes you're not going to have the answers to get them from A to B, and you need to ask and say, hey, I want to let everybody know I'm kind of stumped on this one. Does anybody have ideas? And you will probably be surprised by what ideas and things that people will bring up to you when you're vulnerable and admit that. Some people have great backgrounds, education, experiences, and they can go, hey, yeah, I've done this before, actually. I just never told anybody. Yeah. Hey, send it. Let me hear it. I want to hear it.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, that again, it's like that collaborative inputs, as you're saying there, in a space where there's safety, that a big function of the leadership is to be able to tap on all the resources of the group. Like you're saying, there's capabilities and experience and insights and intuitions and so on that the members of the group are going to have about how to tackle this goal. And that if you're not in a consultative state, like I feel like a lot of this conversation is fitting in underneath last week's point around servant leadership, that there's a style here when you're establishing a vision. I don't think an autocratic style works, that you need to have that buy-in from the individuals into the vision, there might be times later when it's like, yep, we just got to stop, no more conversation. We need to get on and do these tasks in a time critical situation, like I think aviation, and clearly you would have in special forces. But then the goal has already been established by that time. There's already been this buy-in. There's already been this creation of what is we're trying to achieve. And then at certain other moments, you're able to go, boom, autocratic, boom, get this done, get that done. But if you're in that servant leadership style, you're best able to get all of those inputs out of your team. You're able to tap on all the resources that you have there, and you're not going to have people who are isolated or are left out of the conversation. And that you, as you say, that person who's, hey, they've seen that situation before and they've got pretty much what the perfect solution might be, that they stay silent in a bad situation where they haven't had, inclusive or collaborative leadership and communication.
Yes. And that's the thing too, man, is, one thing I've realized, we're all human. Humans aren't meant to be alone. And we're most happy when we have trusted, loving people in our life and relationships, whether it's professional or personal. I see these guys all the time. I hear about them on other podcasts. I know a few guys that are like this too, where they have this vision of standing on the mountaintop. They're wearing the gold medal. They're on top of Mount Everest. They are, the man or the woman, and yes, they achieved that vision of being number one and being the absolute best at something on an individual level. And the truth is, majority of the time, they're very lonely. And that whole thing is fleeting, of getting to the mountaintop, so to speak, and not sharing vision, not sharing and bringing other people up in that sense. And then they're sitting there going, once it's over, they put sometimes years and years of work into one thing, into one vision, and say, I want to be the best. And then they get there and it's not as good. It's not as sweet as they thought it was going to be. And then the vision's gone. And then what? Well, I just dedicated all this stuff. And then you're also standing on the mountaintop alone with no real meaningful relationships in your life.
Yes.
No one, you know what I mean? Like,
I do.
That's a terrible feeling. I've been there, and I'm going to admit that were times in my life where I was so selfish, where it's like, I want to be the best at this and I need to prove myself. I need to show that I'm good enough. I need to show, go down the list. And then I reached it, and it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. And then before I knew it, it was already over. And then I'm sitting there going, well, where are the people that helped me? Where are the people that I shared this with? This whole thing I started was to help people and protect people. And I literally pushed them away, because I went about it the wrong way.
I feel like that's a real risk, when at the earlier point you made about the definition of the vision, that it has to have a meaningful element. It could be that you're chasing something like a certain figure of income, or there can be a success focus, and the success can be really narrow, and you can pursue something and you get to the end of it, and then there's that what now after you've achieved it, that sort of hollow, this hasn't given me the state that I thought I'd have, and I feel like making sure that the vision is meaningful is the really key element before you then start exerting all that energy and pursuing something that might end up being hollow, as you said, Mike. You haven't taken people along, you haven't got meaningful relationships. You've lost sight even what the vision was initially. You've drifted off course.
Yeah.
I feel like there's an element of in the leader as well, in these conversations and development of the vision, that when the leader doesn't have integrity, the whole team knows it. But you're not going to be able to lead that conversation. You're not going to be able to lead that creation of the vision unless you're a person who has integrity. Would you agree with that? I feel like there's ethical behavior that people are gonna immediately see when there's a breakdown between the leader's integrity and there's going to be a immediate, almost, I think, opting out, clocking off and detaching from that vision. I feel like integrity in the leader is a real key element.
Yeah, actually, this came up in conversation the other day. An example is, and I want to get into, that this part of the discussion. It's just an example about putting your name on something. So, as stated before, I lead a Bible study out here, and when I first got out here, there's a guy that attends, that's a good friend of mine, and secretly he was like, "Hey, man, after the study part, I want to pay for bowling, so we can go bowling after and have some fellowship time, and that'll be like my tithe for the group to like provide that space for us to hang out, have fun, and chill and talk about things. But I don't put my name out there." And I was like, "Why don't you want your name out there?" He's like, I just don't." And I was like, "Okay, all right." Well, fast forward a few weeks later, this is last week, he he brought up in the group publicly, he said, I really wanted to say this earlier, but it's going to come out now. He said, when I'm held to a certain standard, which is like within our group as being a Christian, right? And it's like this level of standards and leadership and being the example, which is very hard. He said, I was worried about it because I know who I was and what I was doing. And if my name was attached to that and someone had to, learn from me as being like a leader in this, uh, they would immediately go the other way, because they would look at the old version of me or this person and go, "Oh, he's in it. That's what it is. Nope, I don't want anything to do with it. I'm leaving. I'm not even entertaining it," and walking away. And he's like, that really hurt me and that woke me up, because he's like, I want to be better for myself. I want to be better for my wife. I want to be better for my kids. I'm not perfect. I'm human, but I'm really trying to be here and learn. And this isn't just for me. I want to share it with other people. I'm just trying to learn how to be a leader in this environment, because some of this stuff is very tough to communicate and share in this vision, right? And I just thought it was great for him to be able to feel comfortable to speak on it in public setting and share that. But it goes back to the point of, as a leader in the vision, are you willing to put your name on it? And it's going to reflect you, the group, and that vision well. Because if you're a selfish, hard-hearted person and you're trying to lead a group to a vision with selfish goals, you're probably going to fail. You're probably going to wind up not achieving that vision the way you wanted it to. And the people are going to see right through it.
100%. I think, hypocrisy is something that every culture, and even little babies from different cultures, pick up on. Say one thing and do another is really rapidly. It just undermines all of your authority, right? Because the second part of lead with integrity, I think, is inspire with action, and that you've got to be doing the things that you want. You've got to model a behavior that you want the team to align on and carry out themselves. And I think that there's nothing faster, nothing is more sure than a leader whose actions don't match their words is just going to have the team dissolve. And I think, as you said, they're not going to achieve that vision. All right, so we've covered off on development of the vision, like how do we translate the vision into practical reality? And there's been a bit of a chat here about consensus building with an open forum, going over why we are here, what are we trying to achieve, and what are the values of the individuals, and then trying to build out of that to set clear or achievable goals, have collaborative inputs into those goals, and then lead with integrity and inspire to action. Are there any other elements that you think that have been missed here in the development of vision part, Mike, before we move on to perhaps sustainment and pushing through hard times?
No, I think that covers the general part of it, but yeah, I think we're good for now. So let's jump into sustaining that.
Right. So when it comes to sustaining vision, I think about probably one of the most famous examples, World War II leader Winston Churchill, sustaining his vision of not caving in, not surrendering, and resisting the Nazis in Europe, despite the fact that they were just a little island now off the coast, and the whole of Europe, the whole continent was under the swastika. And talk about sustaining a vision in hard times. I feel like that's an example that you can think of, and you can pull values or ways that Churchill achieved that, because he was such a clear example of it, one person really who led from the front and drew people and got them aligned on his values. I feel like in his example, there's a real big piece on communication, that the vision's been established, we're going to resist. And then these hard times are happening, the Blitz, the bombing London, they're right over they're within eyeshot across the channel to France. Got the Battle of Britain underway in the air. And Churchill is communicating not just in Parliament, he's doing speeches on the radio. And it's a consistent theme, and he keeps communicating almost relentlessly the message, the vision, the victory that's possible. And this ongoing communication and reinforcement of the vision, I think, was really the critical thing that he did during World War II from a leadership element. So I was thinking that is probably in the sustainment part, sustaining the vision through the hard times that are always going to come. There's a really big element that can be taken from Churchill of communication and reinforcement. Do you agree with that, Mike? Is there other elements that you've thought of?
Yeah, no, it's a great example. I mean, leading an army in a country in a world war. I mean, man, what talk about a daunting task of leadership. I'll break it down into two smaller examples that we could use in a practical parts of our day. I mean, how many times, and don't get me wrong, sometimes it's effective and appropriate, but how many times have you sat in a room with, 200 plus people, and a leader gets up and spits out a few inspirational quotes and speaks to everybody and says, we're going to have a great day. And, hey, we hit our goals for the month, and we're going to have a pizza party at the end. No raises, but we'll give you a pizza party. Right. But, and, sometimes, like I said, it's appropriate, but most of the time it's kind of like, here we go, man, another meeting, got to listen to the same guy, say the same stuff, motivation, got it, that sort of thing. But on the flip side, how impactful is it when you're sitting there at your computer, at your desk, or you're going about your daily activities, and your boss walks in, or your leader, whatever, and just walks up to you and says, hey, how's your day today? Hey, I got to tell you, oh man, last night this happened, whatever, or this happened and it made me think of you. Like, how's everything at home? How's your family? How's your kids? What do you think about this going on in the world? And take 5 minutes just to like truly know like what's going on in your life, and it just hits different. Like, man, why does this person really want to come know me? Understand what I'm going through. And when you take a step back and look at the bigger view, it's like, okay, so like a rifle, there's certain parts of a rifle that you only oil. You don't oil up the entire rifle because it can attract dirt and become sluggish, and it's kind of like defeating the purpose. But you open the breech, you oil parts of the bolt, your trigger mechanism, the little pin in there and the spring, you want to oil that up to keep it good. If I just cover the whole rifle in oil and be like, yeah, it's good, I did my job and it's clean and it's functional, you probably failed. Sometimes you got to break it down into the small key pieces, because if I don't oil the bolt, if I don't oil the trigger mechanism or the spring, that weapon is not firing. And if 1% isn't good to go, the entire thing doesn't work, right? So when you're trying to talk about vision, and as a leader, is you have to identify the key parts of the system, of the vision, of the group, whatever you want to, of your family. And you have to go one-on-one and say, what does this thing need in particular to keep them moving in the right direction? Is what they're doing contributing in the right ways? And if they're not, what do I have to offer them? What do I have as a course correction? How can I how can I make sure they're getting the oil at the right times, that they're not getting burned out, that they're not losing their sight, you know? And I
Love
like
it.
to use that correlation when I'm thinking about stuff. Is like, dude, this isn't about the rifle. This is about the firing pin. The firing pin's bent and the bullet's not firing. Right. That's a problem. So I kind of look at it that way, of breaking it down by levels and not expecting just because you stand up on a podium and you have the ability and the power to speak to tons of people that you're in charge and that you're running the vision. It's also about getting into the individual aspects and the key components of the vision, of the operation, of the daily grind, and figuring out where the problems are.
I love that. I really, really like that, because there's that overall vision piece, maybe that, was talking about there with Churchill. And then I really like that coming down into the one-on-one part to identify and to get the comms going, which this all comes under the comms part, getting that feedback and monitoring. How is this individual going? Are they working towards the goal? Are they having difficulties? And then giving them that tailored piece of information. As you're saying there, you don't oil the whole rifle. I really like that analogy. What do they need for success? What resource do they need? Do they need guidance? Do they need support? Do they just need to be checked? Oh no, you're all going great, crack on. I think that's excellent, Mike.
Yeah, I'd like to
think
just a
Go
quick
ahead.
example, Melon. Sorry, I
Mm,
just want to share this because this meant a lot to me. So, about just over, well, almost 2 weeks ago, right after we recorded our last one, I lost my dog back home. Um, my little buddy, I had him 16 and a half years of my life. I got him when I was going through selection and all the way up until now. So I mean, he's been with me every step of the way, victories, defeats, like my little old man, I called him, right? And I wasn't able to be home to be with him when he had to be put down, and it crushed me. And I'm usually a pretty positive guy, very vulnerable, very open about things. And I came in, and it was just very noticeable within my workspace that something was off. And I really try to dedicate myself to others. I truly believe in servant leadership and engage on the personal levels. Like, I make my rounds in the morning and just stop in and just stop into all the offices and say, how you doing today? Anything happened? What do you need today? Like, tell a few jokes, let them know that something happened. And I didn't do that morning. And people were like, hey, why isn't Mike coming around? And I had a lot of people engage with me just to ask, hey, what's going on? And then the question came up is, what can I do for you? The next day, I got a few cards with some really nice things written on it. Um, I love I love old fashions, so I got a mix of old fashioned whiskey, everything as a gift. And even one of the guys after work came up and sat in my room and like talked with me. And I honestly, I was bawling my eyes out for a little while, just talking about my little buddy. And now a couple days later, I'm so grateful for that, because I put a lot of my heart and soul into being a leader, but also like carrying people in a vision, not just at work, but in their own lives. Like, I can tell you something about every one of them, their families, their goals, where they see themselves in 10 years, what their hobbies are, what they love doing, what makes them happy, funny stories that have happened since we've been here together. Like, I could tell you all of that. And a lot of them can tell you the same thing about me. And it was just a great recent example of sharing a vision of all of us coming out of this thing better people, healthy, ready to go home and be with our loved ones again and do good things in the world, and be there for each other, not shutting off, being miserable, becoming drunks and alcoholics, and turning to drugs, and being the victim in a lot of stuff. And I just wanted to share that, man, because, we're
Mm,
sitting here talking about vision and being there for one another at all levels. And I just had that happen. And, we're all susceptible to going off course or slightly falling off the track every once in a while because we're human. And that day, I was veering off the track a little bit, and people noticed. And it was just so important that they know who I am, they know what my beliefs are, what my character is, and they were like, "Nope, we're not going to let you go there." And they were able to grab their leader and bring me back onto the track and be like, "Hey, remember this. This is who you are. This is why you're doing. This is why you are the way you are, and it's good." All right, and just shared like beautiful messages and things like that. And it was, dude, it was so nice. Like seriously, it just uplifted me. I felt totally different coming the next day. Um, but it's a reflection of the work and
yeah,
exactly what we're talking about. So
mate, such a good example. And thanks for sharing that about how these things, once you've created a vision, and it really sounds like part of the vision is the connection and the trust that you've created is a big part. Maybe the values that have gone into the vision in the unit you're in. That it's not just a one-way flow. It's not just a top-down type of thing. It's a connectedness. It's a bottom-up. It's a lateral. Um, these strands of trust and connection can be like a spider web. One person's having a down day, but there's many safety lines that are coming in from those others that are holding them up on their hard times. And safety rope type analogy comes to mind there. That we're all human, as you're saying. We're all going to have down days. We're going to have some good days and bad ones, and all of us are going to get very hard cards dealt to us at certain times. And when you've
yeah,
established this trust and connection in the values behind the vision, that there's that support that flows. I reckon that's a great personal example.
yeah.
I had I
The
had
other
some.
part of this too is identifying um, the people who are struggling with the vision, and then re-engaging with them, reminding them. And what does reminding them look like? It's easy to say, "Oh, hey, remember what you're doing. All right, cool. Continue on with your day." No, probably not going to do it. Um, you know, Melon, we'll use you as an example, and I'll ask you this. So you've been flying for 174 years, so you're kind of experienced, right? And you were a young cadet once and started
I
out this
was.
journey. Yeah, I still give them shit, guys. I love them,
Yeah.
but you started your journey as a young pilot in your 20s, and you had a vision of flying, right?
Mm.
Just keeping it super basic. I'm sure after years and years of the grind and hey, be here on time, traveling, deployments, doing all this stuff, it just became kind of, you know, part of being complacent about some things. About, yeah, I just need to show up again. My whole life is about showing up on time and going to work and getting the resources and coming home. And maybe some other things struggled, and you kind of lost the vision of like, what the hell am I really doing in this big picture? Um, what for you, what were some of those times where you felt you lost the vision? And then what were some of the things that got you back on track?
Mm. Like really big personal challenges. Like when Annie was born super prem at 23 weeks, and I had 6 months in the hospital, 173 days with her in the hospital, and getting back to work after that was a really significant challenge. Like where was my mind? What was I thinking about? Um, how relevant was this? Going to work and flying when I felt like my daughter had been really at death's door, and there was still a lot of risk. And that happened again with when Cherry had cancer. It was like, how important is this in the grand scheme of things? What is it I'm doing here, and how important is it? And that lasted a while. I got to say. But I remember I returned to work after Annie, and I hadn't been at work for 6 months, and I started like my refresher training, and the opportunity was coming up for an upgrade in my level of my category of the on the aircraft type as an instructor, going up to a category B, which is like the senior thing. There's like one or two category A guys on each aircraft type. That's sort of maybe been flying it for 10 or 15 years. But a B cat is like a big deal to get that. And I was sort of due, but I hadn't been at work for 6 months. And the guy came around and spoke to me, who organises these things, the standards flight commander. He's like, what are we going to do here, you know? And I'd really thought about it. And I thought, no, I really want to push for this still. And, you know, I sort of asked him, what's the worst that can happen? You know, like what happens if I fail a B? And he's like, oh, they'll just renew you as a category C, which I already had. I was like, what's some options? I like go for the B or just renew my C anyway. Like, well, I'm going to go for the B then, you know. And I got back into it and sort of reapplied myself to study. And I now had like, it's funny because I got a goal again. It hadn't been on my mind at all the whole time I was away. And it was good. It really sort of drew me in and got me working hard and got me into the books. And yeah, sure enough, came the day the guys flew in the external checkers, and I had a really good mission. And you know, got awarded my BCAT, and it was like a refocus professionally, which was really good for me. Actually, it drew me back into myself a bit, having that professional focus again after a big health and family type experience that had gone for a long time. And yeah, I've, you know, refound my love of flying and striving to do it as well as possible through that, Mike. It was a
Mm-hmm.
it was a very it was a big deal at the time. It might not sound like much, you know, but it was like a big thing to come back after not flying for 6 months and get my mind back in the game. What is it I'm here to do? And a big part of it is, you know, for me, it was all around. I've got a family now, and provision of resources and upskilling and maintaining qualifications is a big part of that. But underneath it, I sort of rediscovered my love of flying again.
Yeah. I love that you very clearly separated the two, right? So there's Melon, young 20-year-old, says, I want to fly and I want to be a great pilot and do all these things. And then you have a family, and then you have some very hard roadblocks in your life for 6 months with Annie and Cherry. And your focus went to them. It wasn't about you anymore. It wasn't about flying. It was about my family. And you were able to shift over to there. And, you know, you said of like, what am I doing here? What am I doing with this? It sounded to me like you knew exactly what you were doing. Your family was your priority and everything else stopped. It wasn't your the goal, the vision wasn't, well, I need to be a really good pilot. You know, it was, I need to really be a good man for my family. And you were able to stop there. And that pilot personal stuff came back later once you got to a good place of re-engaging with it. And my point is, with this one example, is we all get lost in what we're doing sometimes, especially the guys or girls that are married or have families. We're so focused on the next promotion, making the next amount of dollars, you know, like the next leadership title position, and we have to keep going, and the vision of family and everything else gets disintegrated. You know, you get people who are so into, well, I need to keep providing. I provide money. I provide this. I provide that. And it's just like, how about you just being home? You know, like that's part of the vision too, is having time together and sharing memories. Like that's really the whole part of the damn thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
like what kind of vision is it if you're on one side of the world and I'm always over here, and then, you know, the person that's always grinding away at the next chopping block or the next position, is thinking that they're doing really well when in reality they're actually failing at the vision of having a good, healthy family. And I see
Mm,
it all the time, especially in the military, right? Because we're always training, we're always gone, and it's just part of it, and it sucks and it's
mm,
terrible. And I've been a part of it. I've lived it. I've failed at it, but I love that you were able to take a step back and go, what am I really doing here in this part of it? What's my vision? Well, my vision
mm,
is being a good man for my wife and my children, being a good husband, being a good father, being present, letting them know that I'm not leaving, that they're safe, that I'm going to work for them, not for myself, and being a good pilot.
mm,
How many times have something bad happened where you're like, and maybe for the listeners, you have a group of people that are depending on you, but you want to be the best at something. It's like, hey, yeah, look, man, I know that sucks, but I really need you to come in tomorrow and keep grinding if you want to be the best. And you're like, yeah, you know what? He's right. And then you take that selfish route and you're going, and then that group or your family is like fails and struggles, right? That it's those times and opportunities that arise, small or big, that you got to make the decision and go, what the hell am I really doing here? And what's the vision? You need a
mm,
good leader and a good mentor to remind you, hey, listen, you're only here to do a job, but your focus needs to be on the group that's depending on you, right? Or your family at home. Like, this is going to end one day. They are not. They are going to be there the rest of your life. Focus on what is most important, because your vision is to be, retired, sitting healthy with your wife and your children on the porch, having dinner, or go on vacation and just
mm.
enjoying yourself. Quality family time. That's your vision, man. I'm not going to let you forget it. So knock off the selfish stuff, focus on what's truly important, and make the right decision. Right? It's those opportunities that are either going to put you in, and I'm using like a family versus self example. Just making those decisions in those moments are either going to put you on the high mountaintop in first place and you're going to wind up alone, or you're comfortable with maybe falling back to fifth place, but you have the people that mean the most to you and you're still grateful for everything that you have in the long run. That it's not a spike of fleeing happiness and victory, but it's
Mm.
sustainment of joy and gratitude.
I like that. I think maybe in these times, like when things are difficult, you can actually have an update of your vision. You can have different values or different character or principles that come to the top, and then now it's really you can get that clarity. Like I know I really have clarity in times of crisis, Mike. Um, Sometimes when everything's going well, I don't have, and so maybe an element in this sustainment of vision is an ability to adapt, an ability to pivot with changing circumstances and update, and then realign, recommunicate with the team. I know that there was Cherry and I talked just all the time through that period, and that we had a space, a super trusting and connected relationship we had all the way through, and being able to then revisit and pivot and adapt to what was happening rather than sort of plugging along with the previous um, goal or the previous vision when there'd been a really big uh, update in life. So maybe a key part of being able to sustain a vision is being able to adapt and pivot in times of crisis or when there's new information that becomes available.
Yeah, and we've talked before about the OODA loop process,
Yeah,
right? So
100%.
if you haven't listened to that one, go back and listen to the OODA loop. But it's the constant evaluation of your environment and your life and what's going on, and decision making and putting things into action. But also, we've
Mm,
talked about the importance of not holding yourself to goals or visions that are juvenile or that no longer serve you, right?
mm,
So if I'm a 40-year-old man and I made a commitment when I was 21 years old that I'm going to grow up and be a famous rock star that goes out on the road and parties all the time with a bunch of groupies and just live my life. But here I am at 40 years old with a wife and kid. And I'm saying, hey, sorry, babe. Hey, sorry, little girl. I still got to be a rock star and you can't get in the way of that. Like, Hey man, it's time to do some reevaluation because you're way behind the
Yeah,
power
yeah,
curve.
yeah.
Like you can't
100%.
don't hold yourself to that old goal or vision which you thought was good at the time or sounded fun, but your current situation, no, it's time to make some course corrections.
There's a pretty good example, Mike, of an adaptation that was made with Steve Jobs at Apple, I should say, when he returned, and it was in a parlous state, and they brought him back. I think it was like late '90s, maybe like '97 or something, and he just had to like top down change, eliminate a whole lot of products. A whole lot of people, you know, got their marching orders and were no longer with the organization, and he re-established a new vision in that time that Apple was going to have new and innovative products with technology and design elements. And I like that. That's something we know. Like that's such a famous example of someone doing a big update in a really big organization in a time of crisis. So
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're saying there, like being able to update when things change, is a key element. Being able to really refocus, and as you say, not have a juvenile goal, having something that's meaningful and sustaining again in the current time. So
Yes.
we've covered off on the definition of the vision, which was a North Star long-term goal that shapes strategies, decisions, and actions. It aligns teams, it motivates people towards a compelling picture of the future. It's not just a goal, but the values and principles that guide the way there to a meaningful end state. Then we talked about the development of vision, which was a way of translating that vision into a practical reality. We talked about consensus building in an open forum. Why are we here? What are we trying to achieve? What are your values? To then set clear and achievable goals with collaborative inputs from the entire team, that the leader has to display integrity and has to inspire through action. And now we've talked about the sustainment of the vision. So communication reinforcement with the example of Churchill, maintaining a focus on long-term goals through the short-term hardship. Mike talked about identifying the key parts of the group, having one-on-one comms with them, the feedback monitoring, and then tailoring support and resources for them. What are they achieving? What do they need for success? There was a discussion about creation of trust and connection. That's a two-way flow. It's not just top down, but bottom up. And then when you've got a strong team with trust and connection, that we've got many strands of support. And then we finished talking about being able to pivot and update the vision when a new crisis arises or a new information is made available. So, Mike, we've covered a lot of stuff. Do you have any elements you wanted to add for either definition of vision, the development, or the sustainment of vision?
Nothing too much. I guess I just challenged ourselves, because Melon and I are not perfect leaders. We're always sponges. We're always trying to learn how to do better. Because there's always going to be something or someone that we haven't experienced yet come into our life, and we need to be open and ready to learn how to help them in their vision. And really, they might help us in ours. So I would just challenge you to think about what your vision is. What part do you play in a bigger vision, whether it's your family or your work or your company, or just really overall in life? Think about that so you can put yourself down as part A and think of the long-term vision as part B, and then break down what's in between that. Like, where do I need to be? Who do I have in my life? What relationships do I have? How am I getting there? How do I sustain this? What does that look like? What conversations should I probably have? What conversations do I need to have? What are your deficiencies? I mean, literally, there's so many layers to this. That's why it's so frustrating when people just blatantly say, hey, just do better. Hey, why don't you actually lead these people? Hey, why don't you actually do this? It's like, well, if I knew what that was, I would do it. But
Yeah,
we live in a society of push button success. And if I want it right now, I can push a button. And if I have to wait, well, I'll just pay an extra $1.99 to get it. you know you got to sit down and go through these processes and be introspective, and really try to, you know, you don't just jump from one floor to the other. There's on average 16 steps to get to the next floor. Identify what each step is, because it's a step in the right direction to get to where you want to be. There's no way around it.
Love it.
How about you, Melon?
No, I'd love to hear some feedback on what people feel about vision, creation, sustainment, how they've seen it done well, how maybe what they've learned from when times haven't been done well. Yeah, and any questions or topic ideas for future conversations. We're going to probably continue another week or two in this leadership vein, because it's something that Mike and I feel is really important, a big part of what we're after here at Pushing Back Chaos. But until next week, we'd love you to, if you like the episode, subscribe and leave a review for us. It helps with the algorithm, and share it out into your community. Until next week, take care.